All right, we're doing this, everybody. We are live. Please feel free to tell us on the Slack channel how we sound. I already have to mute my 75 monitors of different things I'm watching. Welcome everybody to Office Hours for Kubernetes for June of 2018. I'm George Castro. I'm going to be your host. Jeff and Bob, please introduce yourselves.
Take it away.
All right. My name is Jeffrey Sika. I'm from the University of Michigan. I've been working with Kubernetes since 2014, and I'm kind of all over the place these days.
My name is Bob Killen. I also work for the University of Michigan. Been working with Kubernetes for the same amount of time. Sort of like my areas of interest and expertise is like on-prem and diving down to the networking and some of the other fun stuff.
And I'm George Castro. I work at Heptio as a community manager, and I'm kind of wrangling all this together. We had two people who sent a regret, so unfortunately for this EU edition, we literally have no one from Europe here. So we're going to do our best with what we have available, and hopefully Solly Ross can drop by earlier or later on today. Before we get started, let's go ahead and go through our rules, the ground rules for the event. We're going to go for about an hour today. This is a judgment-free zone. Everybody had to start somewhere. So if you see someone ask a question that you don't like or approve, try to be supportive of people learning this stuff. There's a lot of complexity here that we're trying to work through. While we do our best to answer your questions, the panel doesn't have access to your cluster, so live debugging is kind of off topic. We kind of do our best to get you moving down the next step or figure out how to do a best practice as opposed to, digging through every single line of your YAML sort of thing. Panelists, of course, you're encouraged to expand on answers with your expertise and pro tips and deployment tips and all the stuff that you've been learning at work. Audience, you can help us by pasting in URLs to the official docs, blogs, or anything that might be relevant to the topic at hand. So if you have any expertise, anything that you can help, toss it in the channel. You don't have to whack it in the notes. We'll go back later and fix all that up. But you can always help us out by helping us Google in the background kind of thing. Feel free to post your questions in the channel. We're also monitoring Stack Overflow and discuss.kubernetes.io. If you look at recent threads, you'll find the thread for this show. We do one thread per show to kind of keep that organized. You can also help us out by tweeting, spreading the word, paying it forward, telling your coworkers. We do record these on YouTube, so it's always useful. If you find something that's really useful, it might be helpful for your team at work. Feel free to let them know that they can subscribe and I like to put this kind of stuff on my phone, so when I'm traveling somewhere, I'm always getting and learning information. If you want to sit on this panel and spread your knowledge, you're more than welcome. This is all staffed by volunteers, so if you've just done something really great at work or you have some level of expertise that you want to share with the community, please feel free to let me know, and then you can sit on the panel as well. The commitment is 1 hour a month, so it's definitely a lot of fun. I've put the notes to the URLs, or the URL to the notes in the Slack channel there. That's #office-hours on Kubernetes Slack. We're trying something different today. We're going to put our notes on HackMD, kind of kicking the tires, really enjoying the service so far. So we'll see if it works for us. We're always looking for marketing help. So if you're good at social media, you want to retweet, you're good at helping us spread the word, please let me know so you can help us out. We always appreciate any help in that regard. And of course, at the end, we'll be holding a raffle. If we read your question on air, you're automatically entered into the raffle. What happened is Jeff's incredibly non-weighed randomized script will pick a winner out of everyone that's asked a question. And I'll give you a code and you go to store.cncf.io and get yourself a fancy Kubernetes t-shirt, which I wore mine yesterday. But in the thread, I did put a picture of what it looks like. It is a snazzy piece of gear. Lastly, feel free to hang out in the #office hours afterwards. We do monitor that channel all month. So if you have a question in between sessions and you want to post it there, we'll get to it the next month or whatever. And also, it's really good because there's so many people in Slack. Kubernetes user has 30,000 people. Office Hours is kind of a quieter channel, and you can feel free to get to know each other and help each other out, because that's how we build community. With that, we are ready to go. Is everybody ready? So we have a bunch of questions. So feel free to start asking them now in in the Slack channel. Just do question : so it's obvious for us to pick out. We already have a few. We have quite a large queue, so we're going to have to start to get going here. We're going to try to answer as many questions as possible over the next hour. And then something like 8 hours later today, we'll have another session and we'll do it all over again. So yay, let's get started. How do you guys want me to do this? You guys want to take each question and read it? You want me to read it? How are we doing this?
It doesn't matter too much.
Okay.
I'd say go. Why don't you read it?
Okay, I'll start first with Mart asks, considering best practices, would it be recommended to have the binary in a pod to point to localhost for database proxy container and have a proxy container handle TLS, either Nginx or traffic? ? It feels to me like a lot of overhead per pod, but it will be easier to switch from development to production.
Do you want to bounce back and forth between you and me, Bob?
Sure. Do you want to take question 1? I'll take question 2.
Yeah. So that's kind of how things like Istio and other service mesh services work. The preferred method for things in GKE, Google has their own proxy. This does have some scaling limitations though, and depending on the database, like for Postgres, you may want to set up PG Bouncer or Odyssey, and then have Istio or something else handle the encryption between your application and that service.
Mm-hmm. Okay, question 2. I think that is generally considered bad practice to kill a pod when the database connection or other required service is missing. Would that retry logic be best embedded in the application logic, or could you also have the pod restart after an interval, say 60 seconds or something, to avoid those steps?
So this is sort of like a non-answer, honestly, but I think it would be somewhat dependent on your application logic. And you can have a pod suicide and restart, but depending on how frequently it does that, it might wind up going to crash loop back off, and then it could be starting up much later when you didn't want it to. Whereas if you shove that logic in your application, you can essentially have it go not necessarily indefinitely, but you could do it there. But if your app itself can't handle retries well, that's at least something.
Okay. Sorry, just getting some video choppiness reports there on the stream. Let me stop it real quick, kick it down to 720, and then start it back up. So give us 1 second. All right, that should be a little bit better at least.
Yeah. Can someone confirm in the channel if that's better?
Yep. Let me.
Ed's typing.
Okay, seems better, but as long as the audio is okay, we should be okay. Everyone just give me a thumbs up in the channel if we should keep going.
More people typing.
More people typing. Everyone furiously typing.
Tap.
Thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Just the excuse I needed to get a new i7, right? Okay, moving on. Okay, so I guess the person then went back and updated a bunch of stuff. So we're still on Mart's question here. In the past week, I've been reading into playing around with Istio for the TLS handling in relation to the first question I posted, and everything else Service Mesh has to offer. I guess the Envoy sidecar container has similar functionalities that I was required from Nginx or Traffic. For the retry logic question, I only have to serve the gRPC or HTTP server when all required connections are made. If those fail, it will try again in 10 seconds. The readiness of the server is also used for Kubernetes health check. Would you say that this is a fair approach, or do you have an alternative to share?
No, I definitely say that's a good approach. How about, what do you think, Jeff?
Same.
Okay.
I mean, you and I probably agree.
It's the other half of the hive mind.
Yes, good. And it looks like we have Ed from Packet.net tossing in links in chat, which is always useful.
Yeah.
I'm going to toss you the link to the notes as well, if you want to check those out. Okay, moving on. C. Burner asks, how do I deploy a pod initializer without deadlocking?
So having worked on initializers, you kind of don't. I think, Bob, you're saying that this question had context of his servers were rebooting, and so when they would come back up.
I have to scroll back up and see the question.
Okay. So the way around that, where your server reboots and the initializer was running on the server that reboots, it tries to come back, the initializer fails. That's going to happen unless you're running multiple instances of the initializer pod. You should be able to point an initializer to multiple pods, but I'm looking for the syntax on how to do that. Otherwise, you're absolutely right. It's going to deadlock because it's trying to start itself up and it fails.
Mm-hmm. And we go ahead and posted the URL of that in the channel and in the show notes as well, so that if anybody else has any inputs on that question, they can go ahead and do so. Monty Zero asks, question, is there a way to attach an existing volume when I just restored from a snapshot to a PVC? And then a link to his server fault question, which I'll plop in the channel.
As far as I know, you can create a PV with the backed up data, and then as long as you label your PVC appropriately, the stateful set can pick it up. Although you might have to switch from using the volume claims template. It might try and recreate it, but if you get the UID and everything, it shouldn't. Another possible alternative would actually be mount that volume as something else, copy the data over. Then I think there's also a few applications that will sort of do this for you, at least in certain environments. I actually think Heptio's Arc will handle the backing up and restoring of the snapshotted stuff for you, as long as you're in AWS. And then I think there's a couple other storage vendors and storage, not engines, but storage providers that do something similar.
Okay. Jeff, anything to add?
Not to that one, but I actually have a better answer for the previous one.
Okay. Let's go back to how do I deploy a pod initializer without deadlocking?
So with initializers, you can do one of two things. You can either have a pod initializer or you can have an admission webhook. Mm-hmm. So if you need something that's HA that won't deadlock, you actually spin up a service within Kubernetes that you point the webhook to. So you can have multiple instances of that pod running that you can point to. So if, say, 2 servers go down out of 5, you still have something running that can hit that webhook. So instead of a pod initializer, it's just a webhook that you have pointing internally.
Sure. And as always, if you have follow-up questions, feel free to post them in the channel if you want us to clarify something or anything like that. Moving on, Filippo Projecto asks a very generic question. What are best practices for service accounts?
This is pretty wide field, but generally you create a service account for any type of application or resource within Kubernetes that has to access the Kubernetes API. You don't need to create one per container or really per pod, but it's more
per role
or port, it's kind of simple RBAC. If deployments A and B are part of the same application and hit the same API items, then you could use that same service account. But it really is, trying to isolate permissions between different aspects of your application.
Bob, anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. Danny Boy asks, question, I've been using COPS for some time now. I've never had any issues deploying to AWS at all. Lately, I've been experimenting with Google Cloud, so I've been trying to use COPS to deploy to GCP. I have not succeeded. Been having DNS errors. And is that the only information we have? Oh, there. Okay. So this is a recent one from this morning.
Yeah, I think you actually skipped over one from earlier.
I did.
But we can go back to that one.
Yeah. Let's try to. And then he pastes error in the channel, says validation errors not updated.
So quick little thing, COPS support for GCP is still very beta. So there's likely going to be some issues going forward. I would definitely raise an issue on the, in their issues. And I actually think someone else had a similar issue earlier. I'll paste the link in here. And they actually responded this morning.
Okay.
Where it's, it looks like it was updated an hour ago. 2 hours is still not valid. So honestly, I would update that thread with that issue. But yeah, I would not expect, I would not use COPS in any production capability on GCP at this point in time.
Also, Danny, if you want to share, I'd be interested in knowing why not GKE. Just curious. I know there's a lot of reasons for people to do, a cluster on instances themselves, but I'm always kind of interested in seeing the trade-offs that people do when they're making those deployments. So just kind of an interesting thing if you're willing to share. Sebglon, we're going back one. Mbrand asks, question, Kubernetes performance question. I understand that all API calls must go through a master node for processing. While one can scale up a master vertically, i.e. a bigger machine, is there any advantage to scaling horizontally, i.e. more masters? It is my understanding that even in a multi-master cluster, there is one master which handles the API calls, and others are just redundant spares. Is my understanding incorrect? So let's talk about the vocabulary here a little bit, because when we say, so masters is what they used to be called, right? And now we call them what?
The control plane.
Right. Okay. So let's explain maybe a little bit why that is, and then we can move through there. Bonus points for explaining how this ties into the etcd stuff.
Do you want to cover that? Start with that, or do you want me to start with it, Jeev?
Go for it, man. I'll finish up.
Okay. So the Kubernetes masters are made up of multiple components. Usually on a master, you'll wind up running the kube API server and the most important thing, etcd.
Mm-hmm.
The kube API server, you can actually like load balance between all the nodes. Like you can toss a load balancer in front of it. It's no big deal. You just have to configure it correctly. For etcd, when you start deploying, more than one node, you get your quorum going. One of those nodes will actually become the leader, and that will handle writes. But all nodes can handle reads. And when it comes to, you can scale horizontally, generally 3, odd number of nodes, 3, 5, 7. And as long as your workload, you aren't creating lots of stuff over and over and over again, it honestly should be fine. The folks over at OpenAI actually had a really good article on.
I linked it already.
Okay. Yeah, on scaling to 2,500 nodes. But honestly, even a single master with moderate specs can handle 500 nodes easy. It's not too big an issue.
It is very lean and mean.
Yep. Again, depending on what you're actually running and how chatty it is, that might change. But for most things, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
47,000 cron jobs might cause an issue.
Yes, that was last week's. So,
yeah.
I'm getting
last month's.
Yeah, I'm getting an audio clicking. Is that somebody? Okay. All right. Just wondering if someone was typing. Okay, so that should handle then your control plane question. If anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free.
Yeah, just a quick, even a sync for the kube API server, even if you have a single kube API server backed by multiple etcd instances, generally it'll be able to handle it pretty easily.
Yeah, but most of the, I don't know how many etcd nodes you usually see, 3, 5, 7. Well, they have to be an odd number, right?
Yep.
So
honestly, generally 3.
Yeah. Well, that's the minimum, right?
Yep. The minimum for a quorum.
Yeah. Is there just showing my ignorance of Kubernetes here, is there a general formula that people use in their head, for every 1,000 nodes have X amounts of etcd? Okay.
It's really just dependent on your workload, and how busy your servers actually are.
Right. So there is no easy, as an operator, you have to figure that out. There's no easy way to do that. Okay. Just curious. Okay, moving on. Subglon asks, I have an issue on GKE with a random error dialing backend end of file, EOF.
Yep.
Where's this one posted?
It's it's just earlier in the channel.
Okay. Is there more information than that?
That's it.
There was a little bit.
Okay.
It had to do with, I think, GitLab.
No, it said and a GitLab user on GKE saw the same error.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, I use Kubernetes on GK. I have some error on Kubernetes audit log. I can see this error. The error is random, and a GitLab user on GK has the same error. How can I investigate? The first thing would go ahead. George.
Is there a link anywhere to is there an issue filed or anything?
No, unfortunately not. First and foremost, it seems kind of basic, but what kubectl events show up, and then the logs of the container, because if you're trying to exec into it, that seems like it might also be a DNS resolution issue. So outside of the audit logs, yeah, I'd start looking at event logs and see if like the container's restarting off.
It start getting like corresponding events.
Yeah.
You start looking around at the other things, so something else might be related.
I'd be really curious, like if he comes back, like what events they might find, because then we could probably help him a little bit further.
Mm-hmm. And so if we could get more information on that, Sebglon, that would be really great. Also, just generally speaking, if you do have an issue on a cloud provider, going to their support is always a good step. But if you do find yourself finding an issue and filing it, obviously these public cloud providers are involved in GKE, and we have no problems passing on issues to them to help them, help you out. So but in order to do that, I need something written down, something I could forward to someone. So that could be a GitHub issue, Stack Overflow, or something on Discuss or something like that. So if you find something, help us help you so we can pass it on. Amaranth, let's see. Oh, awesome. So he has filed a GitLab issue. One of you guys go ahead and start reading that one, and then we'll get back to your question here.
I am on it.
Okay. Amaranth asks, regarding autoscaling, we have very spiky usage of our service, with certain events triggering sudden peaks many times over usual loads. Due to this behavior, one of our requirements has been to always have an empty buffer node available to be able to quickly scale up our services, because node creation is very slow. Our current solution works, but it's kind of hacky. A cron job runs every 10 minutes and requests resources equal to one node. I've heard of others doing similar hacks. Is there a more official solution available or in the works for this use case? It feels like I could be a configurable value set when installing the cluster autoscaler, X min available CPU and min available memory.
So there's actually I think you can use priority classes for this. And I know there's an issue out there to like document it better.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I'll link that in here real quick. To be perfectly honest, like I don't know the autoscaler all that well, the cluster autoscaler that well. Our stuff is all on-prem and bare metal, so there's no autoscaling there.
Yeah.
If Solly hops on, he could probably like talk quite a bit more about this.
Yeah, so we're hoping to have Solly Ross, who like works on this stuff, on hopefully today. If not, then later on today. But either way, I'm going to pass this question on to him. I'm going to write this in the notes, and I'll have him either reach out to you or post an answer somewhere. So to answer this, does this one come from Stack Overflow or anywhere, or is it on Slack? I could just have him. Is Amaranth on right now, like on the stream? Or is this one from earlier in the week?
This is from...
I think that one was earlier, because the newer ones are up top, and then we went back until...
So that Amaranth's one was at 8:11 a.m. So not too long ago.
But that was today, right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right. So we'll just ping. I'll have Solly ping him on Slack, and then we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Does that work for everyone? Thumbs up. Okay. Let's go back to this GKE error here. So he linked his GitLab issue there. Is there any information we can glean from this, Jeff?
Not particularly. It does look like the original issue is probably the runner is spun up in GKE. It's a preemptible instance, so it gets preempted, and then the container dies, so it EOFs.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But Seb's instances are not preemptible.
Oh, hey. Solly just joined chat, so maybe he might be help us out here. All right, let's give him some time to like get ready and join us and stuff.
Okay.
All right, so sorry about that. So GKE this is still a bummer for us?
Yeah. The only other thing I could think of, a GKE node to run the GitLab runner. I'm not sure what.
It's not actually available yet.
Yeah. Well, it times out.
Yeah.
Okay, Solly will be joining us in about 10 minutes, so we'll be able to do that, and then maybe he might be able to help us out.
Fantastic.
Okay, so we will come back to those. Let me get back. Everyone's so busy today. All right, Rahul asks, I would like to know about getting started with contribution. Shall I ask this during office hours? Yes, of course. You can ask anything during office hours. I just wanted to take this time real quick to talk about our sister show, which is called Meet Our Contributors. And I'm getting the link for you now and tossing that in the channel. So this is our sister show run by Paris Pittman at Google. And it's run monthly, the second Wednesday of every month. And then we go the third Wednesday of every month. It's this exact format. You join #meet-r-contributors in Slack, and you ask questions about contribution. So it's just like this, except instead of asking how to use Kubernetes, you're asking, how do I format my patches to be right? How to do a pull request? All that sort of contribution stuff. What's a good first issue for me to work on? And Paris walks you through our mentorship programs. I could spend an hour talking about all the programs we have to onboard you into Kubernetes, but we do have a dedicated show to that. And those of you listening, once you get past the using Kubernetes and you're looking to kind of level up and move up the contributor ladder, that show's available there. So both shows run once a month, and you can always ask us how to get involved. And there's never a shortage of things to do in Kubernetes. So absolutely, feel free to dive in, have a good time. If you have any questions, feel free to ping any one of us. Yugesh asks, question, can you direct me to any link or document where internals have auto-scaling services, ingress, and node port works? I do not understand Go, so understanding source code would be a challenge for me.
So internals, we could link to the documentation of those things, but as far as internals, it's kind of difficult. There isn't really like a spec doc or anything besides looking at the API itself, which is also doable. I actually had the API reference up right now.
Bob, do you have a?
Not really. It's pretty much just going through the docs.
Do you? So I want to ask Solly this question specifically, because he explained how he got started once, and I think that might help. So you guys, if it's okay, I'd like to come back to this question. But Jeff is posting you links to the API docs.
Because
that should be a...
Yeah, the API docs themselves are generated from the source, and the source is very well documented. So like comments and everything turn into a fairly fleshed out document.
Yeah. And everything, just about everything is an API object, right? So you're not going to waste your time. You're not going to waste your time reading the API documentation, I guess is what we wanted to say. Okay, and then when Solly joins, I want to come back to this question as well. Question, are there any tools that can make security recommendations given a Kubernetes cluster? Maybe provide cluster dump as input. This is an interesting one. Because I'm pretty sure there's a Sonobui plugin.
I know
that does stuff like this.
Yeah, there's another official thing too. I'm trying to remember the name of. Jeff, do you remember the name of the scanner we used at work for all the images?
No, that was like several years ago.
No. This is for Scott's stuff, like the actual VMs, because there's something similar for that. That's that will do like.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ask him.
Are you in the office?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So what am I asking Scott?
What's the thing they use for like getting the score for all the like Windows servers and all that?
BRB.
Okay. Well, that Chris Short is posting in chat that Aqua Security has a Sonobui plugin, but I'm pretty sure that's just like a benchmark plugin that tests the performance. I don't think it's actually like a security thing. So Sonobui itself will run the Kubernetes end-to-end test, and it will do some of that stuff, like is your RBAC set up correctly? Is there anything obvious that's like not locked down on your node and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's all the Kubernetes end-to-end tests and not
So
specifically security specific.
what's funny is I just found it.
Okay.
It's the CIS benchmark. They have one explicitly for Kubernetes, and they will make suggestions for you.
Oh, okay. All right. So is this the KubeBetch one?
It is.
Hold on. It sounds like Chris Short really knows this a lot better than we do. Okay. So Chris goes on to say, KubeBench is a Go application that checks whether Kubernetes is deployed securely by running the checks documented in the CIS Kubernetes benchmark.
Same thing. We're good.
Okay. So benchmark in this case isn't performance. It's
a
security benchmark. Okay, good to know. All right.
I literally just thought of it when you got up.
Yeah. So this page has a lot more information than the Sonobuoy page. That's a bug. I'm going to file that 1 second. Because the Aqua page actually has like a screenshot, and then it becomes obvious that's what that's for. So I'm going to write that down. 1 second. The Sonobuoy plugin doc page needs to be fixed. Sorry. I do like to write things down so we can fix things after when we run into things like that. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And any other recommendations as far as security stuff?
Scan your images. That's honestly the big one. That's gonna be the entry point into, your cluster in one way, shape, or form.
Sure. And there's lots of tools to do this, right?
Yep.
So if anyone has any opinions on registry security tools, feel free to toss them in chat. Chris would also like to mention that KubeBench was written by the awesome Liz Rice. So a big shout out to her.
Yay.
And Chris Shirt is actually pasting a bunch of good information here about scanning images and stuff like that. And there's a link to VMware's Harbor, and GCR does scanning. K.io is an on-prem one as well, right? Am I pronouncing that right?
K.io?
Yeah.
Don't know that one.
That's the CoreOS one, right?
Oh, Claire.
Oh, Claire. Claire scans the images. K hosts them, right? Okay.
Yep.
Let me get a link to that and plop that in there. Chris says, I may or may not have an article in progress talking about this, and Chris will make sure that he drops the link to the article when it's finished in the office hours. Thank you, Alexander, for that link. Okay, that seems to be a ton of recommendations. Dee, I hope that answers that question for you. Let me know in the chat there. Marquez asks, is it reasonable to have an odd number of API servers run etcd and API servers together on the same node, not specifically Kubernetes node? Is there some benefit to not housing etcd and API server in the same machine? Are there examples that you know of using one etcd cluster to serve multiple API Kubernetes clusters?
Moving backwards, I've never seen one etcd cluster manage
serve multiples.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not an expert, obviously, in any means, but I've heard people continuously recommend separate those.
Separate.
Yeah, like don't have that etcd cluster do anything else but that cluster, right?
Yep.
Audio choppy again. Oh, Ed.
Let's see. It does look choppy. Let me stop it and restart it. 1 second. But I think what happens is my chip gets
text.
Okay, I'm starting it one last time. Here we go.
The final time.
Here we go. All right, so I have the encoding set to actually ultra fast now. So this is literally the fastest I can go without hardware encoding, which I'll need to figure out. Because I don't think I could stick an NVIDIA card in a NUC. But actually the Intel chip should have. Well, anyway, I'll figure that out later. Let's continue. All right, so let me just repeat the question because this will end up being a separate video. Is it reasonable to have your odd number of API servers run etcd and API servers together on the same node, not specifically Kubernetes node? Is there some benefit to not housing etcd in the API in the same machine? Are there examples that you know for using one etcd cluster to serve multiple API clusters?
Yeah.
So we decided that was probably not a good idea, right?
Yeah, we were kind of working through this backwards. So,
yeah, okay, let's do it.
Yep.
So I've never heard of one etcd cluster managing multiple API clusters because etcd itself is so lightweight, it doesn't really make that much sense. And you do want to keep things separated like in a clean sense. So one etcd cluster, one Kubernetes cluster. Is there a benefit to not housing etcd and the API in the same machine?
And the only thing I could really think of would be like you have specific hardware dedicated to etcd, but it really shouldn't make too much of a difference. Or if you have some other like weird security constraint where you can't run them together. But in general, they're always run together.
Yeah, I was going to say normally it feels like
They're
the
paired.
control plane people just consider all of that.
Yep.
Right. And of course, with cloud managed servers, that's all managed for you. You're kind of only working with the worker nodes anyway, right?
Yeah.
Really good question, though. If you have any follow up, Marquez, please feel free to ask in the channel for follow ups. Hey, Solly's here. Awesome. So we had we had an auto scaling question, Solly, that I think we want you to field. But if you need to go get caffeine and stuff, we can come back to it. Let's do this next question, and then we'll come back to auto scaling, and then I wanted to hear his opinion on another one back here. Let's see. Monty Zero asks, "Oh, I'd love to hear about audit logs. I need to record an alert when someone logs into Kubernetes, and then audit logs are a real fire hose of information. Anyone have an example of just showing logins?"
And honestly, not really. It's usually something that's picked up by whatever your log collection system is, and then firing off alert or recording that as a separate event.
Yeah, I was just thinking if you're on like GKE, you could fire that off to Stackdriver and then
let Stackdriver do it for you.
Yeah, Stackdriver itself could do the filtering and alert you whenever there's a login. But that's a GKE specific one.
Yeah. What do you all do?
Not anymore, actually. Stackdriver works on other stuff.
Okay, fair enough.
What do you all use for bare metal? Do you guys audit this kind of thing?
Oh, we use your standard Elk stack.
Okay. So you just shove it into Elk.
Yep. And then alerts based on that.
Yeah. Monty Zero says he's on AWS for audit logs. So
and you can probably do something similar with in AWS.
CloudWatch.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know if EKS has something like that available.
Yeah.
Yet, you know what?
It's understanding the audit log info.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see. Alerting isn't a problem. It's understanding the audit log info. The audit log question was regarding an example of the audit policy file and setting up the right selectors. And then Chris says, ooh, so it sounds like he knows what to say. Also, real quick, while everyone's thinking, how's the feed quality this time? It should be blurrier, but a lot faster. So it looks like Chris Short is going to dig up through some notes. Any other okay, good. So definitely switching to ultra fast was the way to go here. Good to know. Thanks for the feedback, everyone. Okay, so it looks like Chris is digging through his notes. Do we have any other opinions here on audit logs? So it sounds like he doesn't have a problem with alerts.
Yeah.
It's just trying to find. Okay, it looks like Chris is thinking furiously. We'll come back to this one. Hang on, Monty here. Let's go back to Amaranth's question for Solly here. Ready? Amaranth asks, regarding auto scaling, we have very spiky usage of our service with certain events triggering sudden peaks many times over the usual loads. Due to this behavior, one of our requirements has been to always have an empty buffer node available to be able to quickly scale up our services, as our node creation is very slow. Our current solution works, but it's kind of hacky. We have a cron job that runs every 10 minutes and requests resources equal to one node. I've heard of others doing similar hacks. Is there a more official solution available or in the works for this use case? It feels like it could be a configurable value set when installing the cluster autoscaler. Example, min available CPU and min available memory.
So I don't think I have a specific answer here, but I believe actually this got brought up at KubeCon. Someone asked a very similar question, and I think the state of the art was kind of similar hacks, requesting resources or using a preemptible super low priority pod to reserve the resources you need, and then that pod would just get preempted when there's something that actually, or set of pods would get preempted when there was something that actually needed those resources, and that would keep the cluster autoscaler happy. I think the follow-up for that answer was kind of like that we think that last time I heard, we thought that was perhaps an acceptable solution, and we were seeing how that played out. But if you have feedback on something like that, I'd encourage you to file an issue with the cluster autoscaler repository. We're always open to improving it later and reevaluating that decision.
Okay, awesome. And I will plop a link to, what is SIG? Autoscaling, right?
Yeah, and I can drop a link to the cluster autoscaler too.
Yep.
Hold on.
So I don't know if Amaranth is online still, or that's from earlier this morning. So if he's around, please still follow up. Okay. Audit log, Chris Short has provided an example in the chat. Let's see if that's what Monty Zero is looking for. We'll come back to that. YP28 asks, question, how do you guys feel about controlling objects that do not run in Kubernetes with Kubernetes native objects, like controlling a GCP Cloud SQL instance by adding a GCP Cloud SQL instance kind in Kubernetes and managing the creation through the API by an operator to be able to deploy all dependencies in a consistent way?
On paper, it's a fantastic idea, but that means you're, building a lot of custom code to lock yourself into a single cloud provider. If for your use case that works, I would probably do it.
Being able to keep the declarative configuration for your application all together at once is a really big advantage, right? Being able to say, this file here describes all the setup for my application. If I need to rebuild my cluster, I want to deploy a new instance, whatever, I just, kubectl create -f this directory. That's a huge advantage. So I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, and you could probably do it with, there's lots of different ways to do it, but I definitely think it's going to be more your application or use case specific type thing. Well, you could still do it very generically for just creating instances and things like that. I don't know. It's an interesting idea.
So it looks like the example is outdated and too verbose, 10 megabytes per hour. And then, okay, so there's discussion still on the logs. Do you have any audit logs opinions here for this question? I can read it to you, Sally, if you'd like.
Oh, just to follow up for the controllers. There also is the I believe AWS Service Broker, which conforms to the Open Service Broker API. So if you're making use of the service catalog work, some of that can be done through the service broker, the AWS Service Broker.
Okay. Sally, I think I've heard you talk about how you first got started learning Kubernetes, and I remember you having a good answer. Someone asked this question, so I was waiting for you to show up. Yugesh asks, question, can you direct me to any link or document or internals of how autoscaling services ingress and node port works. I do not understand Go, so understanding source code would be a challenge for me. So our recommendation was to start with the API docs. What?
Yeah, so API docs are a decent place to start.
Mm-hmm.
I would also, if you can, some of these are out of date, but oftentimes still have the general concepts down. Are if you can go and find the proposals, some of the proposals that originally proposed the features.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those like morph over the years, where the actual implementation has changed a little bit, but the general concepts are often still good. And obviously, as we go into the future, the more we follow the KEP process, the less it'll be true that those aren't up to date. So definitely in the future, those will be good too. And as we go forward, I'd also like to try to make sure we have some of those internals more documented as well. But that's kind of an ongoing project for all of us.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Just to keep everyone appraised of what's going on in the channel, it looks like a bunch of the examples are out of date, and Monty's thinking he might need to dive into the API next. This sounds like a place where we should write this down. Surely he can't be the first person to wonder who could log into your cluster, right? Are we missing something obvious?
Yeah, if examples are out of date, that's like a documentation bug. And we should either, go and feel free to file that yourself, Monty, or reach out to one of us and we can.
Yeah, Chris should know how to file a bug as well. I recommend grabbing just copy and paste the conversation that you're having, cut it out, kind of mention that the examples are out of date, and we can probably start from there. CC me on the ticket, Chris, and I'll help clean it up and maybe link to the video. So if someone wants to do that, yeah. Worst case, even if we can't help you, we can help find where we're coming up short and writing it down. So that's kind of how open source works. So thank you. Sorry that isn't working for you, but we'll get the ball rolling down the right direction. We have time we have about 5 minutes left for questions, and then we can do the raffle. Jeff, you want to go ahead and start in the background doing your random number generation, guaranteed to be 4.
Well, I'm not going to do it if someone asks another question.
Well, just keep adding.
Oh, I already have a list going.
Oh, okay. So. All right. Oh, good.
I'm on the ball.
Do we have any questions? Do we need? Have we tapped any from Kubernetes users yet that we want to address?
No, we have not pulled from them yet.
Okay.
We've actually had a bunch today.
That's really good. I've noticed that the European time slot always has questions, queued up. Or is it because it's first?
Might be because it's first.
Yeah. But I feel like the interaction in this time zone is very active. So congratulations to those of you participating this morning. So let's, Jeff, why don't you see if you can find a question? We'll maybe do 1 or 2 more, and then we'll raffle off a shirt.
So just making sure we're not raffling for any of the Kubernetes users ones, correct?
No.
Okay.
I'd like to give the shirt to people who actually show up and interact with us and ask questions in chat and whatnot.
All right.
So.
Mike Beau Sejour asked in Kubernetes users, is it normal to have pods on different nodes from the same deployment have the same IP address? They are all in crash loop backoff, so I guess not. Yeah. My immediate thought is something's wrong with the CNI driver.
Yeah. You shouldn't. Pods should have running pods should have different IP addresses.
Globally unique.
Yep.
IP addresses can be reused, obviously, from dead pods to running pods, but because eventually we run out of IPv4 addresses. But you shouldn't have two running pods with the same IP address. That's very wrong.
All right. And Summers asks, and I'm already looking at you, Bob, a small and quite simple question regarding KubeSpray. If I got another address I would like KubeSpray to generate certificates for so that I could later work with that address with kubectl, where should I update that address? In the host INI, I saw only binding to IP addresses.
To be perfectly honest, I don't remember. I'd have to dig through it and take a look. It's been like 8 months since I've touched KubeSpray.
Someone actually suggested he pop into KubeSpray, so we did.
Yeah.
Okay. Time for one more.
I'm scrolling.
And it looks like we found the right blend of encoding speed as well.
Fantastic. Is there some standardized common way for pods running in a cluster to access the cloud provider cloud API, cloud provider / cloud API, that the API server and kubelets have access to via their -- cloud config setup? As it is now, only the API server and kubelets have that access directly, which would make it hard to deploy services that interact with the cloud directly. Example, setting up load balancers. You'd always have to patch that into the API server.
Honestly, I think I need to read that question.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, everything, if you're interacting with like a cloud API, it should be going through the cloud controller. So it should be, we kind of had this question earlier with the custom resources for a cloud. Does that make sense? Am I just talking? I feel like I'm just talking.
We do have a live question though, so let's go back to this. Will be the last one. Monty wasn't on the live stream when we answered his first question. I'm interested to seeing if Solly has an opinion on this. Is there any way to attach an existing volume when I just restored from a snapshot to a PVC? Just repeat what you guys said last time.
Okay. Let's see. So as far as I know, if you create a PV with the backed up data, and if you have all the UID stuff and all that created, it should be able to pick it up again, at least if it's a stateful set. If not, and you can create a one-off, and instead of using the volume claims template, you can have it mount the PVC directly. And then I know that there are other tools like Heptio Arc, which can back up some of that stuff in specific cloud providers. AWS is the one I know specifically, where it can actually restore all that stuff. And I think that is also the case with some of the other storage providers.
Yeah, he's asking can I just edit the vol ID in an existing PV?
I don't know. I'd have to try it.
Yeah. Jeff, do we know?
I haven't edited the vol ID, but I have edited in a PVC what label it's targeting, and then it'll switch around.
Yeah, you can. I mean, if the PV is already there, you can manually bind a persistent volume claim to a particular persistent volume if you have permissions. So if I need this PVC to attach to this PV, and you don't just want to mount the persistent volume directly into So if you know you have a particular PVC that you need to bind to a particular PV, you can do the same that the PVC controller would do, because controllers are just like normal users that have perhaps a different set of permissions from normal users. But if your user has that permission, you can just be like, okay, this PVC is bound to this PV, and then you can mount it into your pod.
Okay, and then Monty says, ooh, that could be good enough. Let us know how that goes, and then feel free to follow up questions. And then I could try, I feel like I should try harder to get a storage person more often. It feels like every time we get a storage question, we get kind of stumped at the end. So we'll ask. So Jeff has done the raffle, and we're ready to give away the shirt. So who's the winner with your guaranteed to be random Python script?
The guaranteed to be random Python script came up with D.
Is he on?
I hope so. They asked if there are any tools that can make security recommendations.
Yes. So you won a shirt. So I've pinged you on Slack. Congratulations. The way it works is, if you ask a question, we'll put you in the raffle, and you can win a shirt. If you show up often and start pasting a lot of notes, helping people out and stuff, or someone's doing something really great, let me know, and we could just send them a shirt also, because we're here to help out. So congratulations, D. That's at D. I'll ping you on Slack to get your shirt. We will go live again in about 7 hours. So just click the subscribe and notify button here on the Kubernetes channel, and you'll get a notification. I'd like to thank, hold on, we have a whole outro here I have to do. Thanks to the following companies for supporting the community with developer volunteers: Giant Swarm, Heptio, Liquid Web, Red Hat, Weaveworks, University of Michigan, and Packet.net, and the CNCF itself. Thanks to Google for sponsoring the t-shirts. Let's see, and feel free to hang out in the Hash office hours. Always appreciate everyone showing up. If you have any feedback on how we can make the show better, as always, let us know. And with that, thanks very much. Thanks, Solly, for jumping in last minute when we needed you. That was
no problem.
The clutch save there. So thanks, and we'll see everyone on Slack, and we'll see everyone. So I won't be hosting next month, but Jeff should, and hopefully he has a more powerful CPU than me. So with that, thank you, and we'll see everyone later.